on the Demogoni Highway going east, and that's San Jacinto right up ahead there. You have Palm Springs on the other side.
To think about it was like a movie.
It's a very unique community. The last place you'd expect.
We're in the Hemet Valley, San Jacinto Valley area, which is next to the Diamond Lake Valley area to the right. Diamond Lake actually is a larger body of water than Lake Havasu. And the lake essentially was built by this Diamond Valley being dammed at each end to create the lake. Up here to the right is the sort of museum that was established. I haven't been there yet, but it contains all kinds of displays of artifacts found during the excavation and building of the dam. There's dinosaur fossils and other things. I haven't really taken a look in there. Now this is the road up to the lake. Since we're having a drought, it'll be interesting to see how low the lake is. I know that this past winter we received a good deal of rain, but not enough to break the drought. But I understand that they've been diverting water to it from the northern aqueduct system of California. Water from the Colorado River is not diverted to this lake because there is mussel contamination, and they want to not contaminate this body of water. This is horse country for Southern California. Quarter horse ranches. It's amazing how many ranches are out here raising horses. I wasn't aware of that. This valley here, which now is full of water, was one of those ranch valleys, both agriculture and horses. And as we swing around, again, we're still testing this dash cam, so I'm not quite sure what kind of coverage we're going to get, or the quality. Again, there's no swimming, no water skiing, strictly fishing. This is the domestic drinking water. And by the looks of this lake, from last year, I would say it's come up quite a bit. You can see the shoreline could come up somewhat. We'll get a little closer. but the shoreline has come up. From what I understand, they can now, as a result, launch boats from this ramp. Yeah, you can't see it, but there's a marina down there with boat launch facilities. I would say that it is maybe 100 feet lower than capacity, but it certainly is up compared to last year. So they've diverted quite a bit of water to this lake. And there's a little Diamond Valley Lake store. They have all your typical supplies for fishing. Again, no water skiing, which is kind of a bummer to be out there in a boat, not being able to get in the water to cool off or swim or ski. Fishing. It's a big lake. Looking at it doesn't look as large as it actually is. There's a little better shot of the lake in the dam. Looks like there's a fishing boat with a day camp there on that island. This lake was completed in 2005. Took a few years to fill up. At the time, we weren't in a drought. I believe construction began maybe 10 years earlier. It was the main source of jobs for the area. A little hazy. There have been some local fires, brush fires. This area is still being developed. There's a water park that's on the other side of the road here. There's baseball diamonds, I think a couple soccer fields. There's room for expansion. There's pads been leveled. Pads have been leveled for whatever recreational needs there may be an interest in. There's a shot of the Western Science Center. If it wasn't so hot, it's about 82 degrees. Walking up there to that lake would be an excellent hike. This is an area of Southern California that's long been remote from population centers. And we have folks that have carved their little ranches back in those hills. And they're fairly isolated. Sure, other than their horse ranches, there is some agriculture, but for the most part, these folks here are good American patriotic folks. The only fruits and nuts you'll find in this area are those that are grown in the agricultural field here in Southern California. Maybe an hour to major employment areas, other than the local retail, very small, limited manufacturing there in Hemet or San Jacinto. So it's pretty much a bedroom community, retirement area, which keeps your development down and the population as a result. Down. So you have these, like I said, these ranch areas, old communities, developments spread out here. This is much what the valley there where Diamond Valley Lake is now. This is what it would have been like in that area. Some people would say this looks like desert. Actually, for Southern California, this is not considered desert. This would be considered more agriculture. Well, obviously, there's horses all over here. But desert is on the other side of that hill there, to the left or ahead. That's your Coachella Valley, Palm Springs area. Now I'm partial to Southern California in that when you drive out here, you have wide open skies. You can see without any obstruction other than the hills and the trees, which are minimal. But for me, you can see out. You can see out there and not feel that you're constrained in what your landscape view is. I was back in Delaware a couple years ago, worked back there, and it's beautiful, but driving for road trips, I felt like I was driving through a foliage canyon. It would be hard to see really the view beyond the trees. For me, it was somewhat limiting in what I wanted to see in terms of a road trip, so beyond the trees along the road's edge. For many years, I traveled to Florida, Cape Canaveral, and road trips there beyond along the coast were pretty much the same. Roads cut through the forest, the foliage. Again, very limiting in terms of view diversity. You could spend hours and the view would be the same. Beautiful, but to me, boring. Someone might look at this and say, well, gosh, this looks pretty dry and desolate. Well, it's just all in a matter of what you appreciate in your experiences. So for me, out west, southwest, is where I've developed a preference for living, traveling. And once you can appreciate this area, you really begin to appreciate the details that are here. Now this is a road that is going southeast, and beyond the hill ahead will be the Palomar Mountains, where there's the Palomar Observatory. This road is identified as S3. So a little bit about this dash cam. It's filming in Super HD. It's a very high resolution. It has a 3-inch display. You can see from this side. It's got a 170-degree angle viewing. And of course it has, it's actually filming right now in 2304 by 1296, 30 frames per second. It's Super HD 1296p. It has lane drifting. Can't really see what the acronym for it is, but if you like drift from your lane, it can detect and give you a beep. So I've been getting some beeps here off of this camera, trying to figure out all that it's telling me. It has a GPS module, so that apparently with the software that I've downloaded, you'll be able to play the movie, and it will have recorded in the metadata of that video the GPS tracking coordinates, and should display in a playback on the computer. So we'll see how that works. Not sure how that's incorporated into any movie that I might put up on YouTube. I'm not sure. I'll have to see. I can't imagine that it comes across as part of the video, that being the map GPS tracking. So we'll see. Although I lived in Southern California essentially my whole life, this is an area over the years has become more, you might say, accessible in terms of freeways to get out to this location. And as such, I am not familiar with the history of this area. I know we just passed an adobe house to the left back there. There is an old schoolhouse up here in the late 1800s. So this area does have some history that I'll have to research and perhaps plug into this video. that's a steep driveway. Let you take your motorhome up that. If you're not familiar with the home construction here in California, we don't have the severe weather, winter weather, that the folks on the East Coast have. I found it interesting when living back there in Delaware. Everything was pretty much brick masonry buildings, I guess is one way to say it, to withstand those winters. Here, you do not have those extremes, and people live in mobile homes, trailers, amongst multi-million-dollar ranches. Now during the winter months, or actually spring, once we've had the rains, this will all be green. That grass there, that dry brush, will be green. And if you've heard of California gold, in addition to the 1849 gold rush, you have the gold in the dried brush. Again, in the desert, you're not going to have brush like that. These would all be green hills during the winter, spring. Okay, up ahead there is the Palomar Mountain. And I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up as I make this turn. Straight ahead at the top of that hill, you'll see a white dome. That's Palomar Observatory. Straight up ahead there, top of the mountain. Sunny Hills Towing. So I sure wouldn't want to have my car towed here. If I was in any town nearby, which might be 20 miles away. Okay, so, pardon me. So if I go over that double yellow line, this dash cam will let me know I've left my lane. It must, I'm not sure it picks that up. Might be off the paint, reflection, or those reflectors. Or the sensor just might be able to detect optically the lane stripe and gauge that within its field of view. Not quite sure. Looks like at one time this was a heavily used area for dirt bike riding. This would have been an excellent place when I rode dirt bikes, where I would have come. Looks like it's been fenced off. I would have pulled over there back in the day, probably camped. Spent a weekend dirt bike riding. Sundance Meadows, not quite sure what that is. I'll look that up. Okay, this is the Cottonwood School road where there is the Cottonwood School. There still stands the original schoolhouse. So this is a historical marker, number 52, and it says Cottonwood School. This building was erected in 1897, the school having served the area in 3 other locations since before 1870. When it was discontinued in 1975, it was the last functioning one-room schoolhouse in Riverside County, reminiscent of rural schoolhouses throughout America. History, geography, reading, and arithmetic were basic subjects. Early students bore pioneer names including Tripp, Bergman, Ludi, and Thompson. Okay, so that is quite an old building, 1897. And of course there's the new one. It's a California Distinguished School. Very isolated area. My kind of place. Beautiful little ranch along here. And this is where we're going to turn around. And we'll just keep moving. You really don't want to attract too much attention out in these parts. They might not take too kindly to strangers. Especially in a black Z71 Colorado. nice little valley back in there to the right. Can't see on camera here, but there's a large ranch back there in that valley. Definitely need to look into Sundance Meadows. For sale, has water and power. I imagine the water source here is well water. Looks like that would have been a nice little camp area years ago. Go bike riding. Now with all the liability issues, lawsuits, people get in accidents, off-roading, everything's fenced off. There's still parts in this area where you can bike ride. In fact, this is an area that a lot of the professional off-road, desert, motocross riders live. You'll see they've got ranches with jumps, tracks on their property in their backyard. You'll see their 18-wheelers with their trucks to, which are essentially their garage. They go to races. So it's a little horse stadium there. Looks like that might be where they break horses. They've had a few rodeos now and then. Back in the day. Whoa. Birds chasing something. American flag going there. Now off to the left here would be west is Temecula, and the wine country is in that direction. The wine country for Southern California, that is. Rocks kind of look like Alabama Hills up there outside of Lone Pine. Wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a movie or two filmed down here. mountain out there, as far as you can see on the horizon, is Big Bear. And then farthest to the right would be San Jacinto. Hills and valleys in between. They have a unique way of growing, not sure what they're growing, in these little Quonset hut looking structures just to the left there. I do know they grow onions, zucchini, strawberries. We get those locally here. Those are all greenhouse